Hey, what's going on, Who Dat Nation? It is yours truly, TJ Jones, the host of the State of the Saints podcast. And some of you probably thought about starting your very own sports podcast. Well, let me help you out. I want to tell you a little bit about Anchor. Now, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's an easy way to make a podcast, and it's free. You don't have to worry about paying a bunch of money each month. There are creation tools to allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so you don't have to worry about that. So it can be heard on apps like Spotify and Apple Podcasts and many, many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. So go to anchorfm.com and start your very own podcast today. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Hey, what's going on, Who Dat Nation? It is yours truly, TJ Jones, the host of the State of the Saints podcast. And I have a special guest with me. I have from the New Orleans Advocate and Times-Picayune, I have Luke Johnson. What's going on, Luke?
Hey, TJ, I'm doing great, man. How you doing?
I'm doing just fine, man. Ready to talk some Saints footballs. A lot of storylines going around training camp. So just want to get your take on it. But first, I want to ask you about a story that just came out. It was about Saints owner Gayle Benson. She was diagnosed with COVID-19. I just wanted to know, how is Miss Benson doing? And what have you heard from the whole story?
Well, everything we've heard right now is that she didn't need to be hospitalized. She's recovering at home. She's doing fairly well from what we hear. She's on meetings with the NFL owners and the NBA owners, still working. So if she's still working, she's got to be doing all right. But it is a big deal, and it is a thing that is completely unique to 2020, where they've got to be very careful around people like Gayle Benson, because at her age, she's much more susceptible to this being a very serious thing for her health. Right. It's obviously something to keep an eye on, but from every indication that we have so far is that she's in good shape and managing this thing as well as she can.
Yeah, I mean, everybody, is concerned about Gayle Benson. Anytime, she, gets sick or anything that happens with her. I mean, the Who Dat Nation love Gayle Benson. I mean, the things that she does in the community, the money that she has donated, to all these charitable causes. And most importantly, we're just concerned about her health. So, I mean, it's good that she's still doing things, due to the fact that she, has COVID-19. So I just want to keep an eye on that and make sure that she's fine. But let's go ahead and move on. The practice that took place on yesterday, we had the Saints players. They paid tribute to the guy out in Wisconsin that was gunned down by law enforcement, Jacob Blake. All of the players wore his name on the front of their helmets. I was just wondering, was there any talk of the New Orleans Saints possibly not having practice on yesterday? I know a couple of teams, I think maybe 9, decided not to have practice. So was there any talk of the New Orleans Saints possibly canceling practice like the other 9 teams?
Everybody we talked to said they were not discussing that. That wasn't an option for them. But I don't think necessarily that we've seen the last of them using their voice and their ideas to kind of keep this discussion on the forefront, like they did with the Jacob Blake stickers on their helmets. Right. I think they're going to be planning other stuff, and I think they'll be debuting other stuff later. And I just don't think that their form of protest includes not being out there on the football field. And that's, I think you're seeing this all across the sports world. It's not just football teams doing this. Obviously, the Milwaukee Bucks boycotted or striked from playing their playoff game, and a bunch of Major League Baseball teams have done the same.
Right.
Football teams have not gone up there for practice. So I think just the understanding is that in this day and age we're in, there's no incentive to just be quiet. If you have something you want to say and you have the platform of being a professional athlete, you're going to say it. Right. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. And Luke, if I'm not mistaken, I think you are from the state of Wisconsin. Am I correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
What about you? Have you heard from any of your family members or friends or anything like that about just the state of Wisconsin as a whole, and maybe some of the protesting or something like that they may be having around the area? And
I haven't heard any from anybody personally. Just the Kenosha area is probably closer to Chicago than it is to where I'm from. But that said, I think there's an understanding up there that this sort of thing can happen anywhere. It can happen in communities like Kenosha or communities like Ferguson or wherever. And I think this is for people who maybe didn't understand that, this is really bringing that to light.
Yeah, absolutely. And shouts out to the New Orleans Saints, using their platform to actually, bring light to Jacob Blake and also just to pay tribute to him. But let's go ahead and start talk a little bit about training camp, some of the storylines we have. I want to start with Patrick Robinson. He has been one of the bright spots of training camp. Patrick Robinson, I mean, he was drafted by the Saints back in 2010. He had some ups and downs in the Saints uniform, and he leaves the New Orleans Saints, goes to San Diego, who is now Los Angeles, and he also went to Philadelphia, where he was ranked one of the best nickel corners in all of football. I think he was ranked number one the year where the Philadelphia Eagles actually won the Super Bowl, and now he's back for a second time with the New Orleans Saints. What has Patrick Robinson been doing in camp to stand out? And do you think that he will be able to take what he's doing in camp and maybe go out on the field this 2020 season and make an impact?
Well, I think first and foremost, the most important thing with P. Rob is that he's healthy. Basically, ever since when he re-signed in New Orleans, there's a lot of enthusiasm about him because he was coming off such a strong season with Philly.
Right.
And he only made it 4 games before he had that season-ending ankle injury against I think it was Atlanta in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, he hasn't really looked like the kind of player that they were anticipating they were going to get when they signed him. He's either been hurt or ineffective. They've moved P.J. Williams to that nickel spot, and he's kind of taken the lead there.
Right.
But this training camp, I mean, he's getting his hands on balls. He's intercepting a bunch of passes. I think I've had him down with 3 interceptions and probably another one that he should have had. He dropped. He's playing really well. I don't know exactly what that means yet. I don't know if that means he's taking over for P.J. Williams, if they're going to kind of use P.J. Williams a little bit like they used C.J. Gardner-Johnson last year and move him around to get P-Rob on the field. But I think he's going to find a spot on the field. And I think in general, their defensive secondary is really strong. Just with Marshawn and Jack Rabbit, Malcolm Jenkins. I think Marcus Williams is underrated because a lot of people want to bring up the tackling failures, but I think he's a pretty good coverage player.
Yeah.
C.J. Gardner-Johnson is really good. I think they're pretty well stacked there. So yeah, that's a good thing. And for guys like P-Rob, who's having a really good training camp, it's still you're having a good camp, and it's still gonna be tough for him to get on the field. Yeah,
I mean, I think Patrick Robinson did a really good job, like towards the end of the 2019 season. I mean, I can remember the game against the Tennessee Titans. That probably was his best game back in a Saints uniform. And even though that pass that happened a wild card round, that wasn't his strong point. He was playing that on the outside, and he doesn't really do much damage on the outside. He does most of his damage in the nickel. And I'm interested to see like some of the things that I'm hearing from you all writing about him. Hopefully we actually see that on the field, and him making some splash plays, because I mean the Saints did pay him a good amount of money for him to come back to this organization to make an impact.
They did redo his deal though. So he's not making quite as much as he was when they first brought him in.
Right.
Which is, he was probably making too much of that at that stage when he'd been given the team. But I think still, from what we've seen so far, he doesn't look like the same player we saw in 2018 or 2019. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking forward to seeing what he can do. I know what he's capable of. I mean, like I said, we've seen it out in Philadelphia, and if we can get that Patrick Robinson in the rotation or even on the field, I think the Saints have a threat in the secondary. Let's talk about someone that really doesn't get that much attention in the secondary, and he's a really good player. That's DJ Swearinger. DJ Swearinger is one of those guys everywhere he went, rather it was Washington, Arizona, he's always made an impact. What have you seen or heard from training camp in regards to DJ Swearinger, and do you think there is a spot for him in the secondary this season?
I think so. The hard part to gauge is how much they value his veteran leadership back there and knowing you can count on that guy to be on the field and to make plays, right, versus having a younger, cheaper player who's going to play special teams. So I think when you're looking at whether or not you keep DJ Swearinger, you're like, okay, well, do we keep DJ Swearinger or Saquon Hampton, who's a younger player with maybe more upside long term, right, who you've got controllable for the next 2 years at $600,000. Right. So that's really what it kind of boils down to for me. But I think they clearly like him. And with Malcolm Jenkins has been out the last couple of days, Swearinger's been filling in at the starting safety with the ones, and he's looked pretty good. He picked off Drew Brees in practice today, I think, and we see him out there, and the guy's obviously played a ton of football. Right. And you see him out there like directing guys. You go here. This is what's coming, and it works. Like they understand him and listen to him, and he's kind of like the Malcolm Jenkins of the second unit, you know, just so in terms of like understanding what's going on and communicating what's going on. So I think that's valuable. Yeah. But when you're looking at how you fit 53 players together, and what your backup strong safety needs to do, I don't think he's a lock to make the roster, even though I think we like him.
Yeah. You know, the thing about DJ Swearinger, Luke, is, I mean, he's a really good safety. The only issue that has plagued him is injury. You know, I mean, he's one of those guys that is a ball hawk. I can remember him, like, it seemed like every time the Saints play against a team that he plays for, he always intercepts Drew Brees. Like, the Redskin game, I think when they played the Texans, I think he was playing for him. He intercepted him. So
yeah, I mean, it's really funny. It's really funny you bring that up because like we have like this archive of photos, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember when he got signed last year. We figure out he's getting signed, and we write the story, and we look for a photo. We type in DJ Swearinger, and there's like 5 pictures of him like intercepting Drew Brees. Yeah, in the archive, you know, it's just, and like all these different uniforms. It's true. It's true. Yeah, I'm sorry for interrupting, though.
No, Luke, it's fine. I mean, but I'm just saying, like, he's a very instinctive safety. I mean, I've always liked him. I mean, he's a hard-hitting safety. He's not one of those guys that's afraid to get his helmet in there, you know, put it on somebody's chest. He's not afraid of it at all. You know what I'm saying? But he's a big physical guy, but injuries has always been one of the issues why teams seem to just let him go so easily. Let's move on and talk a little bit about Alvin Kamara. He's been out of practice for the last, couple of days. He's dealing with stomach issues, and we understand that. But, a lot of people in the Who Dat Nation, for some apparent reason, I don't know, they think that Alvin Kamara fell off a cliff all of a sudden, just because he got injured this 2019 season. Do you think this is going to be a bounce-back year for Alvin Kamara? And do you believe that Alvin Kamara could be one of those top 3, top 5 running backs that when these lists come out, his name is just, a foregone conclusion?
Yeah, I think so. He's got to stay healthy, and I think that's really the biggest question mark with him, right? His ability is just off the charts when he's healthy, and on top of that, he's in an offense that just absolutely knows how to use him. Right. But look, we saw for the first 3 games last year, he was unreal. Yeah. Like if you go back and watch like the second half of the Houston game, like nobody could bring him down. And then you go watch 2 weeks later against Seattle, and he made a bunch of people who are very, very good football players like Bobby Wagner and others just look like fools trying to tackle him. He's so elusive, and he's got so much that he brings in offense. But when he's hurt, and you take away a little bit of that, you take off Superman's cape, he's just Clark Kent out there. He's just a really good football player, but he's not this like just top of the level, above, head and shoulders above everybody else. So I think that's what people are thinking about. That was really like the last 12 games he played last year. He played hurt a lot, and Saints asked him to play hurt, and he did. And you wonder if maybe he should have just sat out for 5 or 6 weeks, and just been the player we're all kind of accustomed to seeing. But it would have been a really tough decision for him to do that because Drew was obviously out, and the team needed everybody they could have to get through that stretch. So, I mean, as long as he stays healthy, man, there are so few players like him, and he can hurt you in so many ways. And it's, between the tackles, outside the tackles, as a receiver, as a deep ball receiver, he's so good, so good.
Look, I want to ask you about that. I mean, you brought up a very interesting point about him possibly sitting out a couple more weeks before he was, I don't want to say fully healthy, because, I mean, these guys aren't 100%, especially when they, taking wear and tear over a few weeks. But Latavius Murray was playing at a pretty high level. I mean, understand that Drew Brees was out, Teddy Bridgewater was in. But if you look at the games in which Latavius Murray was a starter, 109 yards rushing against a Chicago Bears defense. And I understand Akeem Hicks, he's the guy in the middle, probably wouldn't, have the same type of success. But nevertheless, this is still a Chicago Bears defense. You still have Roquan Smith. You still have Khalil Mack out there. He ran for 109 yards. And then he followed it up against Arizona and ran for another 102 yards. So I'm just wondering, do you think the Saints could have possibly used Latavius Murray more in the way that he was playing at such a high level? Do you feel like they should have rushed Alvin Kamara back?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an argument to be made there. But then at the same time, I don't know how well Latavius Murray is going to hold up if he's getting 25 touches a game every week, like he was in those games. He was getting a lot of touches in those games. I think Latavius is a really good player. I think they should probably work him into the offense a little bit more this year than they did last year, and maybe have something closer to like the sort of split that Alvin had with Mark Ingram. I think that was if everybody remembers last year, that was the big question going into the year was what's his workload? What's Alvin Kamara's workload going to be?
I remember that.
I think everybody was kind of expecting somewhere in between the 15 to 20 touch range, and it ended up being closer to 20 to 25. I think you lose something with Alvin if you just overuse him. And I understand the tendency to want to get there because he's so good. But I think if you back off of him a little bit and feature Latavius Murray a little bit more, you're saving the reps on Alvin, and you're getting Latavius Murray into a rhythm. And obviously, when he got into a rhythm last year and got a lot of touches, he was really, really good. I just think I think it could work out to their benefit if they kind of go that route and pull back on Alvin a little bit and give Latavius a little bit more opportunity.
I just look at Latavius as almost like a preheat running back. I call those type of running backs preheat, like a preheat oven. You press the button, you put it on 375. It takes a while for it to warm up. I look at him the same exact way. The more carries he gets, the stronger he gets. I mean, I've been watching him since he was out in Oakland. He used to average between 20 to 25 carries out there in Oakland. That's the reason how he got signed by Minnesota, and everybody's seeing how good he was. I just think that he's one of those guys that, I mean, I'll just say, I think Alvin Kamara, they said he had a torn MCL. They said, he's supposed to sit out maybe 6 weeks. I feel like even if he doesn't sit out 6 weeks, Latavius Murray, the way he was playing and the way the offense was clicking at that time between, having balance between, with Teddy Bridgewater with the play action and, and nickel and diming it down the field, and also the running game, I feel like he could have gave you that type of success for at least about 3 to 4 weeks and gave Alvin Kamara another opportunity to possibly sit out, rehab a little bit more, and maybe have been further along in the season than he actually ended up being, because, I mean, you're still taking wear and tear, and who knows, I mean, the possibility of re-aggravating that injury you already have. So, I mean, that's the way I look at him. I feel like Mark Ingram was a preheat running back, and I feel like Latavius was also one of those guys. So,
yeah, a big bruised guy. Now you start having a defense try to take down a 230-pound running back 20 times a game.
Right.
It's not fun about that. You know?
Right.
I think there's absolutely something to that.
Yeah, I mean, ask anybody in the AFC South, they have to tackle Derrick Henry every week. But
although I will say Derrick Henry is a completely different animal, man.
Yeah. I mean, unbelievable. But let's move on. Let's talk about Cam Jordan. Tom Brady, legendary quarterback Tom Brady came out and said that he feels that Cam Jordan is one of the most underrated players in the NFL. And I think that's high praise coming from a guy, who has 6 Super Bowls. In your opinion, Luke, why is it that Cam Jordan constantly gets snubbed? I mean, you never hear his name when it comes to Defensive Player of the Year. It seems like he barely gets the recognition he deserves. I guess interviewing Cam Jordan, being around him, what kind of mind frame does he have? Does it bother him, or does it not bother him? I mean, what's the mind frame of Cam Jordan?
I'm sure it bothers him. I'm sure it eats at him. Cam is very aware of his standing, and I think in a good way. I don't think he's a selfish player, but he wants to be considered one of the best players in the NFL, and I think he's there. Right. Talking to Cam, interviewing Cam, it doesn't make really any sense to me why he's not like this much bigger personality in the NFL, because he's so outgoing, he's so gregarious.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy spent all summer on like NFL Network, on ESPN, on Bleacher Report, doing all these interviews and like showing his personality, which is just it's so fun. Right? Cam is like one of the most fun athletes I've ever covered. No. So I don't really understand why, in that respect, why he's not like this bigger, like he's not on par with like JJ Watt or even Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald is like a phenomenal football player. Yeah. And maybe Aaron Donald's a better football player than Cam, but like when you start thinking about like Aaron Donald as like a charismatic individual and Cam as a charismatic individual, it's like Cam's up here. I don't really get that. I get it from that perspective, but I will say that it probably doesn't hurt or doesn't help Cam that the Saints in general as an organization, since Sean Payton has been here, are really considered only as an offensive team.
Yeah,
league-wide. That's their reputation, hands down. And as good as the Saints defense has been these last couple of years, much of the conversation nationally about the Saints is about Drew Brees and Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara and Taysom Hill and all these offensive players, despite the fact that Cam Jordan I think, ranks among NFL players like number 3 or 4 in the last 5 years in sacks.
Yep.
Above some guys who are considered bigger names than him. Von Miller.
Right.
I think Cam's a better player than Von Miller, but Von Miller gets more hype, pub, whatever. So, yeah. And I'm sure Cam very much appreciated hearing Tom Brady say that. And I'm sure when week 1 rolls around and we talk to Cam about Tom Brady, he's going to be talking some smack on Tom Brady.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you get an opportunity, to cover him and get a front row seat of who Cam Jordan is, as far as, his interviews and stuff like that.
It's a 3-ring circus sometimes, man.
I mean, he just seems like an incredibly fun guy. And I just don't understand. Like, I mean, he's never considered like for Defensive Player of the Year. He had 15.5 sacks last season alone. And it seemed like he was trumped by Shaq Barrett, who, I mean, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers didn't even make the playoffs. So I feel like to me, I feel like he deserves way more attention. But I think you hit the nail on the head because when you look at undisputed first take. If they're talking about the Saints, they're bringing up the offense and how much firepower that they have.
And I think they can. I think they can turn that around, right? But you're talking about 15 years of that being the relevant topic regarding New Orleans. Drew Brees and Sean Payton have been this franchise since 2006. Right. So the Saints defense has played really remarkably the last couple of years. For as well as their offensive play, usually like when teams are scoring a bunch of points and putting up a bunch of yards, like the Saints offense has been, like the defensive numbers kind of struggle, but they've been the top 10 defense the last 3 years, and they want to be a top 5 defense. And I think eventually they'll get their due.
And I think another thing too, Luke, is the way that the Saints have been losing in the playoffs is because of the defense. And I normally say this: it's like if you have a 45-minute commute and you drive perfectly for about 44 minutes and 55 seconds, and all of a sudden you hit a fire hydrant right on the block that you stay on. I mean, all of that great driving just completely negates, the fact that you ran into the fact that you ran into the fire hydrant, completely wipes it out. The Saints play really good defense during these games, but what's the one thing people remember? They remember the Minneapolis Miracle. They remember P.J. Williams getting a pass caught over him by Kyle Rudolph. It's plays that involve the defense have been like, I guess, the woes of the New Orleans Saints over the past couple of years. So they're not going to get that attention until, unfortunately, they be able to finish strong. And I think that's when people are going to start looking at them for being a credible defense and, and a respectable defense. Because, you brought up Von Miller. Von Miller was a Super Bowl MVP because he dominated that game against the Carolina Panthers. So, he has that going for him. I just wish that Cam Jordan, would still get a little bit more recognition than he's been getting from the national media. Lastly, I want to ask you about Cesar Ruiz. Cesar Ruiz and Eric McCoy have been rotating from center to right guard. And what have you seen or heard from about Cesar Ruiz? And have you seen him, kind of make some splash in training camp?
So I think it's kind of tough. It's kind of tough to get a really good gauge for where the offensive linemen are at right now, just because our vantage point for watching training camp is right on the line. You can't really get a good idea of these blocks because it's just there's 20 guys right there. So the only way we've really been able to see how we can do is seeing them perform in some of these one-on-ones, which are usually at a far end of the field.
Right.
It's the Saints are trying to make sure I have no idea what the hell I'm talking about with an offensive line. I will say that I think when you look at Ruiz, he's clearly a very good athlete in an offensive lineman's body. Right. He's got really, really quick feet. They do these drills where they're just setting up for their punch. He's got a really strong punch. I think he looks a lot like Eric McCoy, maybe a little bit more athletic than Eric McCoy. And Eric McCoy is a pretty athletic offensive lineman too. So I don't know yet exactly how they're going to roll this out. I think it works in McCoy's favor that he played 16 games at center last year and he missed 5 snaps all year. When it comes to playing center again, because he's got that built-in institutional knowledge that Ruiz just doesn't have and didn't get with no preseason games and whatnot.
Good point.
So I think that works to McCoy's favor playing center, but I think ultimately that position goes through Ruiz, and McCoy is the right guard. And I just think the two players are very, very similar. So I don't think there's going to be a big drop off one way or another.
Yeah. I just think about the growing pains that Cesar Ruiz would have to go through because, I talked to Mike Triplett a couple of weeks ago. He was on a show, and he was talking about when Eric McCoy first got his first snaps at center, and he was supposed to snap the ball, and everybody is running up the field, and he's standing right there still holding a football. And I mean, and he had OTAs and he had minicamp and rookie camp, and he still was dealing with those type of situations.
Preseason games.
Yep, exactly. So I mean, I only can imagine what Cesar Ruiz is going through right now. I mean, I understand that the Saints are rotating him, but I'm pretty sure if I'm a betting man, I would think that he's going to be playing right guard at the start of the season, even if the Saints decide to transition him from right guard to center later on in the season. But I think he's going to start there. Like you said, Erik McCoy, I mean, he played pretty solid last season. So I don't think you want to, mess with that just yet. But I definitely feel like Cesar Ruiz, I mean, watching him in college, knowing what he's capable of, I mean, I think the Saints have found the guy that they feel can be the next Max Unger, So they've been looking for him for quite some time.
Well, they've invested so many resources in the offensive line. It's crazy. You look at it left to right. I mean, Teron Armstead was a third-round pick that they hit on, but they signed him to a huge deal.
Yeah.
And then Andres Pete was a first-round pick that they just signed to a huge deal.
Right.
Cesar Ruiz is a first-round pick. Erik McCoy is a second-round pick. Ryan Ramchek's a first-round pick.
Yeah.
That's 4 out of your 5 are first or second-round picks.
Yeah.
And all 5 are homegrown. Right?
Yep.
That's how you build a winning football program is just dominating on the offensive and defensive lines and taking care of those guys. And that's exactly why I think the Saints have been in the position they've been in the last couple of years. Beyond, obviously you need good players at quarterback. That's the most important thing, right? But you have Drew Brees and you have guys like Alvin Kamara. You protect Drew Brees and you open holes for Alvin Kamara so they can do their thing. That's exactly what the Saints have done.
I mean, well, if you're a fan of the philosophy of John Madden, I mean, John Madden says that you build your team by the offensive line. I mean, there's this great debate between him and Al Davis. And Al Davis felt like you build your team through your secondary, and John Madden felt like you built it through the offensive line. So if you are a John Madden philosopher, you believe in his philosophy, you feel like the offensive line, the way the Saints are building the team, they're actually building it, I mean, for life after Drew Brees. Because, I mean, the fact is a young quarterback is going to have to come in. He's going to have to learn. And, I mean, a young quarterback best friend is a good defense and a running game. So, I mean, in order for you to have a successful running game, you have to have a good offensive line. And I think that you talked about Andres Pete getting paid, to Ryan Armstead. Ryan Ramczyk is going to get paid. I mean, he's going to be one of the highest paid right tackles in football. And it wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't become the highest right tackle paid.
He'll be breaking a record for sure.
Yeah. I mean, final question for you, Luke. What are you looking for this season? What player do you have your eye on this season? What do you expect from this player?
So, the one I'm most interested in seeing is Emmanuel Sanders. I feel like that's just been a piece that's been missing in this offense for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
I loved having Ted Ginn around. Ted Ginn was a great person to talk to, and I think he played an important role, especially in that 2017 season, his first year here.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's the caliber of player as Emmanuel Sanders is.
Right.
And Sanders is the type of player who you can build a whole set of plays for. You can put him on the inside, you can put him on the outside, you can have him run all these different routes. You couldn't really do that with Ted Ginn. You could use Ted Ginn's speed on an end around, or use Ted Ginn's speed on the deep ball, the shot plays, but that's about it.
Right.
I think Emmanuel Sanders just opens the doors up.
Right.
And he opens the doors up from a wide receiver position. You already had Alvin Kamara doing that from running back, and I think Jared Cook was very much that guy last year for them, opening the door up where you could just take the top off from the seam. But Sanders gives you a completely different element from that wide receiver position outside of Mike Thomas. So I don't think he's going to be a guy that goes out and catches 100 balls, but I think he's a guy that's going to go catch 60 balls, and a lot of them are going to be big, huge plays and game-changing type of plays because teams are going to try to take away Mike Thomas, and it's really going to backfire on him this year. But I say that just because, I think he's the one I'm most excited to see out of all the new guys.
Right.
But the season is absolutely, totally, always dependent on number 9. So, he's 41.
Yeah.
I think he looks very much like Drew Brees right now, which is a good thing.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
But it's always, at this stage of his career, it's always something you got to watch. You got to just watch for because we've seen it just in the past with any player. It doesn't matter whether you're a quarterback or whatever, but any player. It's like once you hit that point, your game just leaves you. Peyton Manning was a shell of himself in his last year.
Yeah.
So it's just, I think, as long as Drew Brees is still playing, I'm just going to be just watching him very closely, and I think he's the type of guy who will hang it up before he ever gets to that. But I think you gotta watch him for it anyways.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you got Drew Brees on the field, I mean, you have an opportunity to win. I think that Drew Brees in the month of December last year, he had 15 touchdowns, 1 interception. I mean, he was playing at a pretty high level. And I feel like he still has something left in the tank. I honestly believe, like, if Drew Brees felt like he left it all on the field in that game versus the Vikings, and that's all he had to give at that time, he would have hung it up. And I really think, I know a lot of people think it's tongue-in-cheek about him deciding if he wanted to retire or not. I don't. I really felt like he really thought that through and maybe thought about, not coming back, to the Saints organization. But we're glad to have him back, and we're looking forward to seeing number 9 do his thing, as well as all the other players that are part of the New Orleans Saints. Luke Johnson, thank you very much for being a part of the State of the Saints podcast. And before you go, just let everybody know how they can get in touch with you.
Yep, you can get in touch with me just like TJ did on Twitter. I'm at by Luke Johnson. You can read all my stuff at NOLA.com.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. Once again, Luke Johnson from New Orleans Advocate and Times-Picayune. We really do appreciate it.